You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. Dead of Winter continues their Truth and Reconciliation concert series this weekend, presenting Andrew Balfour's Transformation. To hear more, I'm joined by Mel Braun in studio and Andrew remotely. Welcome back to Classic 107, both.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You bet.
Well, Andrew, I'd like to begin by chatting about this concert's title. You have been transforming our collective understanding and listening for years now through your compositions and your programming. And I mean, maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into this, but this sounds like a very personal concert. This is Andrew Balfour's Transformation, and I imagine transformation could be taken all sorts of ways. I mean, personal, societal, foundational. Can you tell us more about that? Can we begin by talking about your transformation?
Well, I mean, I appreciate that introduction, but it is personal for me. But I think everything I write for Dead of Winter particularly is personal, but this one a little bit more. But I think that when we met for a composers gathering in New Bertal, Manitoba, in the summer with Hussein and Cheryl and Mel, we discussed what does transformation mean. It means many things, and we're using an English word to describe a universal idea of transformation, whether it be spiritual, physical, culturally, particularly culturally, because I think we're bringing in different cultures in this. We'll talk in a bit. But myself, I felt that this was a transformation. I've been going through a lot of transformation in the last couple of years, particularly this last year. And you just never know where you're going to land. I think it's really important that we, as composers, we can gather a year or half a year before and discuss what we want to do collectively, rather than sort of getting a commission, writing a piece, submitting it, and then performed. That's not the way we roll these days. And, I think that it's much more powerful and much more of a unique experience for the audience and even for our singers to be able to witness and experience and participate in something that's from the root was very, very thought out. And, we have incredibly thoughtful composers, Hussein and Cheryl and Mel and myself. We've been thinking about this in a while. So finally, we're lucky enough to put this together this last 2 weeks. And it's very exciting. We had an incredible rehearsal last night. We're going to put all the elements in the ring, I guess, so to speak, tomorrow. It's a dress rehearsal. And then let it free and breathe on Saturday night and let people witness it. It's very exciting.
I do want to talk more about many of those elements you brought up, and I want to bring Mel into the conversation in just a moment, but I'm looking at your Musica Intima hoodie that you're wearing now, and it has me thinking about a conversation we last had, and you used this beautiful word, and it's a word that's stuck with me since the conversation, and again, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly, but you used the word ispachiwan, and you talked about being on a journey. Just to go back to this idea of transformation one more time, and you were talking about planning and the idea of getting to this point. Does this transformation feel like a sort of like continuation of that ispachiwan, of that journey?
Well, definitely. I think even from our very first, 5-6 years ago, Mel, when we first did our Truth and Reconciliation concert, it is a journey. It's not like we're doing one and then we go to another one. We're building relationships with all our collaborators. And, I think I mentioned before, we've worked with Jeremy Dutcher, we've looked at Chris Dirksen, Elliot Britton, just to name a few, Melody McIver, Corey Campbell. And those are part of our family now, and I feel that, I'm proud of what we've been able to do. But it is an ispachiwan. It is a journey for myself personally. I think it's a journey for Mel, all our singers, and our collaborators, and even our audience. So there's never a destination. I always say that too. Reconciliation is not a destination; it's an ongoing ispachiwan, ongoing journey. So
absolutely,
that to me is the vital part of our understanding about truth, Topway, the Cree word for truth, and ispachiwan, journey, and reconciliation. So we're just trying to do what we can to heal multi-generational wounds for my people.
It is such important work. It is such moving work. And you just alluded to this composers retreat that happened last year in Mel. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about who was there, where were you, and what was that experience like?
So this is the second year that we've done a composers retreat. And so we always think carefully about, depending largely on Andrew's guidance, who we want to invite. And so this time around, we wanted to invite Hussein Jan Mohammed, who comes from the Ismaili tradition, and Cheryl Sewipagaham. And so we got together in Neubergtal in the Heritage Village there, hosted by Paul and Marguerite Cron, wonderful hosts. And it was just time together. We spent a lot of time talking. We sang, we improvised, we did all kinds of other things too. They have a wonderful property there. So there's a neighboring donkey that's in the back pasture, and there was a football to toss around. There was all kinds of walks to do. So we had a wonderful time. And out of all of this, all of these composers in their own way are working toward this idea of how do you heal this fractured world that we're in. And I'm a Mennonite, of course, and so I'm only channeling what I've heard. But you know what Louis Riel said over 100 years ago is that the artists would lead the way back, and I think that's been part of what this was. And so out of our conversations came this idea of how we needed to help transform, and what better way to transform than through singing, because singing, well, it's changed the world in many, many places and continues to do so. So out of all those discussions and those wonderful meals and riding the donkeys and playing football and all this stuff came this idea of us trying to find a way of unifying things.
Yeah. I think, you know, as much as we're kind of chuckling at the fact that you're hanging out with a donkey and tossing a football around, I think that what we can come back to here is that idea of just building connection, right? Like the conversations. And I mean, I think people often think that composers gather and they sit and they have these very, you know, deep and heavy and meaningful conversations, which I'm sure happen.
Totally.
But there's also the lighter things. There's just going for a walk together and spending time together, and through connection can come collaboration. And that's sort of what this series is for Dead of Winter, right?
It is. And I mean, all of us had certain things in common. Hussein loves chant in his tradition. Mm-hmm. Cheryl works with a lot of chant-like rhythms in her stuff. I'm, as Andrew said yesterday, listening to my piece, he said, there's a lot of Anglican chant in your piece. So I came up with a new word, Manglican. It's now
good.
Manglican chant.
Yeah, Mennonite Anglican, I would imagine. Yes.
So we're all interested in chant and also in soundscapes, all of us. And so there was a kind of a common language there, which each would pursue in their own way. And bringing Hussein in particular, was a new thing, because I think, as Andrew can talk about much more eloquently than I, reconciliation and reciprocity, it's not just the colonialists and the settlers, it's now other world traditions and cultures.
Andrew, can I bring him back into the conversation here remotely? I mean, Hussein, Ismaili Muslim of the Southeast Asian and East African descent. What was it like for you working together and as you know, Mel was just saying, that idea of sort of reciprocity and working together and just really bouncing ideas off one another?
Well, Hussein is a jewel, and I would even go so far to say he's a jewel in the Canadian choral scene. And I mean, he's in Calgary right now working with the Canadian Chamber Choir, so he's been going, you know, back and forth with us, and I'm so proud of him. And I've known him for several years, but I've never actually worked with him before. So this was a perfect opportunity to work with him, you know, with my group and introducing him to, you know, our choral community here in Manitoba. His work, Sun Over Water, which has been sung all over the place, is a masterpiece. Yeah. And I really feel we're adding our own kind of unique perspective with his permission to this and with his guidance. So, you know, I kind of feel that I'm very grateful to be able to work with such an outstanding artist. And he and Cheryl are good friends too. In fact, this time last year, they were in Istanbul for the World Choral Symposium, where they're representing Canadian with the Vancouver Youth Choir. Representing, and I can't think of any two artists in this country that could represent the choral scene in Canada as well as they do. I was so proud of them. And now that they're in Winnipeg, a year later after Istanbul, I feel that they're bringing their global knowledge now to us and to our community. And, you know, Hussein is bringing in some young singers. I was almost crying on Saturday morning when they came out with their family and their parents, and their parents witnessing something they'd never seen, with their children singing with a professional chamber choir, and a totally different style of music for us. And they were leading us. These young kids were leading us. So there's something to be said about the so-called professional singer, you know, that has all the wide experiences. I felt like a newbie watching all those kids and again crying. Considering the state of the world right now, I feel that this is what we need to witness. I mean, if it's only for an hour or so, turn off the news and come and see what the alternative is.
Yep.
Real peace, real reconciliation, real healing. And we're lucky enough to be able to have the support of our organization, Dead of Winter. Mel is a wizard leading in all this. I don't think there's any other conductor in this country that could have the patience and the knowledge and the experience to bring in all of these different elements together. This is not your typical choral conducting, 101
No.
project. It's just something where you have to be on the fly. Mel's open to any suggestions. So I think the audience will see that. I know the audience will see that on Saturday. They'll see something pretty special. No other choir in the country is doing anything as unique as this right now. And that's something I'm very proud of.
As you should be. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this is going to be one of those transformative concerts. I mean, like, that's sort of the goal here. Is as much as it's Andrew Balfour's transformation, it's all of ours, right? Audience, singer, conductor, composer.
Absolutely.
Speaking of compositions, Andrew, there's going to be a new work of yours that is premiered. Can you tell us more about this one?
This is the personal element of this concert for me. It's called Mati Manatu with a question mark and a demon with a question mark. It's based on dreams that I've had as a child. I had a lot of really bad nightmares. I guess clinically they're called terror dreams, where you wake up and you can't move and you can't say anything. You're just kind of frozen and paralyzed, I guess. And I often wondered about that until I was much older, and elders taught me that you were actually communicating outside of your spiritual realm, so to speak, and possibly that ancestors were reaching out to you, because I remember hearing whisperings and stuff like that. It's terrifying, absolutely terrifying as a young child. But I look back at that and I thought I kind of wanted to write about that. And the question mark is that I had teachings yesterday from Corey Campbell, who came out to our rehearsal, who was singing with us as songkeeper. And he talked about the idea of demon is a Eurocentric Christian idea. Yeah. We don't really have evil spirits in our spirituality. There's, evil is a concept that really wasn't part of our teachings spiritually. So, and I wrote this piece without actually having those teachings. I think it landed where I wanted it to. But it's a soundscape. It's it's kind of delves in and out of a dream, an unknown. We're using the incredible talent of Leanne Zacharias, who is just one of the best cellists I've ever worked with. She's an incredible artist, and she's also got her own bag of tricks in terms of her loop pedals and incredible technique, electroacoustic, but also just her acoustic cello will add to it. So there's many dimensions, but Machi Manatu is a soundscape that delves into the unknown, and where it ends up, we're not sure. But I mean, in terms of the ending, I want to bring the audience into an experience where they're not really sure what they're listening to, but it's pretty heavy, but not in a bad way. It's not, I don't like to use the word evil. It's just a learning experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a very fascinating, and like you say, bringing that personal touch, as always with your writing, but especially in this, I mean, thinking back on your younger years, right? I mean, imparting a little bit of that, and sounds very fascinating indeed. And Mel, as if leading this concert wasn't enough, there's also going to be a work of yours on the program. I think this was one when the rest of us were trying to figure out how to bake sourdough. You were instead writing a bit of music. Can you tell us more?
Absolutely, yeah. COVID hit us all really hard, and the shutdown was so immediate and so catastrophic. And there's a million things we were preparing for, and then Schluss, as they say, auf Deutsch. And as I will mention to the audience, I spent a month listening to the Netherlands Bach Society, Doing Bach, just to center myself, right? And then started thinking about trees, because spring came, and I live just a few blocks from the station here, and there's so many wonderful trees in the neighborhood. And this led me to this whole thing about how yes, the world is on many levels falling apart, but look what nature has. Anyway, out of all that, came this piece which combines various texts and is it's serious, but it's also a playful look at what trees provide for us, the healing, just all the basic stuff, right? There's a fun section where the baritones get to sing a long list of things made out of wood, like ships, canoes, bagpipes, shawms, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And also, my favorite section of the piece, a depiction of the boreal forest, because that, as many say, that's the lungs of the earth for us here. And so I wanted to capture some of that. And it's all built around a Bach choral, Nunurundi Velda. So that keeps coming back in various guises. So yeah, it just came up that way. And it's interesting that Cheryl's new piece, Mitosak, which has been a great opportunity for us to work on the Cree language, of which she is becoming an important keeper, it's also about trees and the place of trees. And then yesterday at rehearsal, Corey said, I've got a song about that. So he's going to contribute a song about trees. So it's another theme because nature, just keeps giving. And if we're going to have reciprocity, it's not just with each other and with other cultures and nations. It's with nature. I don't think that's not rocket science. That's just there.
Well, it is certainly going to be a very moving show, and one that, again, I so wholeheartedly encourage those who are looking for something to do on Saturday. If you're at all curious, this is one of those shows you should be at. Andrew Balfour's Transformation. That's this Saturday, February 24th, 7:30 p.m. And if you're free a little bit earlier, 6:45, there is going to be a composer's pre-concert talk, the idea of storytelling through music, so you can really hear more about this whole idea. I want to thank you both, Andrew and Mel, for joining me and to tell us a little bit more about this transformation.
Absolutely. And thanks for the opportunity, Simon.
Simon. Thank you.